can.
Okay, for the record, I'm reading the nomination letter, January 27, 2021, Executive Council, Council Chamber, State House, Boston, Mass. Dear councilors, I'm pleased to nominate William Traban Bailey to the position of Associate Justice of the Cambridge District Court. I submit the nomination for the advice and consent of the Executive Council pursuant to Part 2, Chapter 2 of the Constitution of Massachusetts, Commonwealth of Massachusetts. I enclose the nominee's resume for your convenience. Sincerely, Charles D. Baker. The vice is the Honorable Michelle B. Hogan. So with that, we will, all the councilors are present by way of Zoom or in person. And we will start by asking anybody that is going to speak on your behalf to let us know if they're on the Zoom. Or any witnesses ready? Judge?
I'm here.
Judge? Where?
I'm right here.
I can't see you. Oh, there you are. Okay, great, great.
Good morning.
Good morning, Judge. It's always a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you so much. Likewise.
How's everything out in Springfield?
We're hanging in there, like the rest of the state, hoping for some positive movement as far as getting back to the business of the court, but happy to be healthy and trusting in the administration. Fortunate that we live in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, where we're guided by science and reason, and we're able to move through this thing safely. So we're hanging in there. Thank you very much.
Well said. Well said. Okay, you got the floor.
All right. Do I need to be sworn, Counselor? Is that?
No, you don't. We don't have the right to give an oath.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Well, first of all, let me say congratulations to Attorney Bailey and his family. I personally know what an amazing accomplishment this is and an amazing moment for him. I've known Trevon over 20 years, and I was extremely gratified when he contacted me and indicated that he was going to be applying and asked for whatever advice and or guidance or perspective that I could give him. I was even more gratified when he asked me for a letter of recommendation, and then completely ecstatic when he asked me to testify on his behalf. I also want to say congratulations to the governor for what I think is an outstanding pick. A real person, a human being who has had an amazing journey, which I'm sure you folks were able to see, counselors were able to see from reviewing his application, and someone who has, even though he is a fantastic legal professional, is an even better human being. And I think that that's probably something that we can all feel very good about. The process is working, and I commend the folks involved in the process who both selected Attorney Bailey and who have supported his application. The district court, as you folks know, is the court of the people. And the work that we do is, sure, in one part it's legal, and in one part it's punishment, and in one part it's the rehabilitation. But in large degree, it's the encouragement. It's the real life connection that we have with folks. I like to think of the district court as where we get an opportunity to turn somebody around if they may be headed in the wrong direction. Sure, we do see folks who have made choices in their life and are determined to sabotage their life, but to a large degree, we see people who are confused, who are lost, who may have been misguided, and who certainly have made choices and mistakes that have put them in precarious situations. And every day I have to exercise my discretion and decide whether I am going to sentence someone or put some form of conditions on them or what have you, or make a decision with respect to a restraining order that is going to significantly impact someone's life. But it's important in that position, because we are so close to the public and to the community, that you have someone who's a real person, who has had hardships, who has not had a perfect life, who didn't come necessarily from perfect circumstances, because empathy and compassion and understanding are critical. Now, to be firm and to be fair and to know the law and to hold people accountable is equally as important. And I think Attorney Bailey has all of those qualities because of the life circumstances that he came up in, and the fact that He is, although with this amazing support of his family, and I want to congratulate his family, his mother and father as well, because we know he wouldn't be here without those outstanding folks who raised him, and his extended family, I'm sure, grandmamas and aunties and uncles and all of that, because nobody gets anywhere on their own. But having said that, he is truly a self-made man. You know, he didn't receive anything. He didn't come from money. He didn't have the opportunity to join in some big firm or slide into some position because he had a father or an uncle or a cousin or a mother or aunt who had some particular standing or hold in the community. He made his own way. He made his bones, as we like to say. And that I can both relate to and I am infinitely proud of. And I believe those sorts of qualities and characteristics are critical when you get to the bench, because you're going to see folks who, you know, but for the grace of God and perhaps a choice here or there or an opportunity here or there, could be in a completely different circumstance and situation. And you have to decide, is this that opportunity? And sometimes the opportunity isn't what they want, but it may be exactly what they need. Specifically, folks, I want to tell you about this man and the work he's done in our specialty court. He was one of the foundation people as a drug court advocate, and drug court advocates are lawyers who pro bono are willing to donate essentially their time. And when I say their time, I mean their entire time. It is a 24/7, 365 commitment. And they receive no remuneration, no compensation whatsoever. We assign each and every drug court participant. We've had approximately 90 to 100 thus far in our 3 years, or 3.5 years up and running. And Attorney Bailey's been there from the very beginning. And they're assigned folks, and they walk with those participants through every single aspect of their progress and sometimes of their setbacks. They're on call constantly. I know personally, I've talked to Attorney Bailey on weekends, at night. We've met off hours on particular participants. He is outstanding. He's exemplary, and really is sort of the template of the type of individual that we would want to have. He is at the same time that he holds his participants accountable, he is also compassionate and understands that it is a disease and is willing to assist in any way that he can. And most times, folks, it's not legal, because the only time we really get into legal stuff is if there's a violation and I assign a NAC and then he has to do his legal work. Mostly it's encouragement, it's fellowship, it's support from that perspective. And I'm not there when he's sharing these personal things about his life with his participants, but I can tell you from the reports of the participants how impactful it has been, how much they have appreciated and enjoyed and benefited from him sharing about his own life and what has worked for him and where he has succeeded and where he has failed, quite candidly. There's a young lady named Michelle Jackson, who recently, we had the honor of having her speak at our virtual open house. We were fortunate enough recently to receive a grant, a sizable grant from SAMHSA for our drug court, and we're partnering with BHN, and we're doing co-occurring disorders and being able to help folks who have significant mental health issues as well as substance use disorder. We're very, very fortunate and very happy. And we did recently an open house, and Michelle Jackson was chosen as our speaker. Now, this is a lady who, when I met her, I am not going to, I couldn't possibly overstate this. She looked like she was a breath away from death. Her body, her spirit, her everything, her essence had been crushed by substance use, by years and years of abuse and suffering at the hands of other people, and the suffering that she put upon herself and what the drugs had done to her. Over the course of about 2 years, maybe, and it wasn't all perfect, maybe even a little bit longer, there were sanctions, there were detentions, there were successes, there were failures, there was laughter, there were tears. But this young lady went from a participant to a graduate, to getting a job, to having her own house, to just recently graduating from Westfield State as a recovery coach, being certified at the Commonwealth of Massachusetts as a recovery coach, to being hired by BHN as a recovery coach. And now she will be working, she's been hired by our program through our grant. She will be working in our program as a recovery coach in the very same program that she graduated from. And when people say that miracles don't happen, they're wrong. They're wrong. Miracles happen every single day. And one of the people that she thanked in her statement when we did our virtual open house was Attorney Bailey. She said it was my lawyer who was there with me all the time. And I reviewed his application and he talked about that. So the impact that relationship had was double-sided. It wasn't a one-sided situation. It wasn't just like he gave but didn't receive, and it wasn't like she gave but didn't receive. And this is the essence of who this man is. When you care, this work is hard. You folks know that. When you care, you're going to have your heart broken. That's part of the obligation, but it's also part of the opportunity. And when you're in the district court, you need somebody who cares enough sometimes to say to somebody, hey, you need to take a time out, my friend. Sometimes that time out might be 2.5 years. I've had the occasion, unfortunately, to have to give folks a 2.5-year timeout. But certainly it's something that we recognize, that we want folks who are using discernment, who have real life experiences, who have an understanding that we're not all perfect and we didn't come from perfect circumstances or situations. And I commend again the governor for looking at Mr. Bailey and seeing, and I won't get into the details, you folks have looked at his application, but there were things there that in the past would have been automatic bars from consideration that he had in his life. The circumstances, of course, are different with every single person. But I'm glad that we're not just applying things in a very sterile and inhuman way. I'm glad we're looking at people, at human beings, and looking at what's in the best interest of the community. I couldn't say more firmly, more passionately, with more conviction, that this will be good for this community. This man will be good for this community. This man will be a foundation for this community, a place where they can go for justice. And justice isn't necessarily what you want, but it's always what we need. And that's critically important. So with that, I leave myself open to questions, and again, just say congratulations to Trevon. I am deeply, deeply proud and excited, and can't wait to have him as a colleague on the bench. I've had him as a colleague as a lawyer. I saw his work as a lawyer. He was always outstanding. I joked with him this morning when I called him that I had no idea how impressive he actually is. I mean, you see the guy, and the guy's an impressive guy in every aspect of his presentation. But then you look at what's in the record, and you see that not only does the man have style, but he also has substance. And so I end with that.
Okay, anybody have any questions for the judge? Councillor Devaney.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you, Judge, for your thoughtful presentation. There's no questions to ask. You have covered it all, and believe me, your testimony means a lot. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to see you, Mr. Devaney.
Judge, can I ask you, are you doing any trials out in Springfield?
Not yet. We were supposed to kick off, and then I think it was the Chief Justice, Bud, who pressed the pause button on that. We were supposed to kick off, I think, last week or 2 weeks ago, but it's coming. I've heard rumor, but we're anxious. We know that the work needs to get done. You know, trying to balance the safety issues with the necessity for the work to be done. I really didn't, I mean, I always had a sense, but you don't really realize how much people rely on the law and the court for critical resolution of matters in life until something like this. And that has definitely given me a better understanding of the responsibility we have to the community. So we are, as judges, very anxious to get back to the work that we do. We're fortunate that we have the technology, that we're able to do a lot of the critical work still, so we haven't missed out on anything there in being able to protect the public and also provide the public with our product, which is justice. But the jury trials and the motions and things of this nature are critical. And I hope that folks above my pay grade, wiser than me, are consulting and getting together and figure out some way for us to be able to get this done, because we're ready. We feel like our work is essential, and we want to be just as brave as our firefighters, our police officers, our medical professionals. You know, we want to be able to serve our public in the same way.
Yeah, I've had some jury waive trials, and I've had some hearings with witnesses that were on Zoom
Right.
and witnesses that had masks on. And what I found on the Zoom issue was that one case, it was a police officer, and he was on the Zoom. He kept looking down at something in front of him, and I assumed it was the police report.
Yeah.
And in another case I had, the assistant DA was looking above the camera, and he was, no question in my mind, getting signals from somebody standing behind that camera. So I know we're going through a tough time, but to me, that's just not fair. Because that would
Yeah.
never be allowed in a courtroom, you know?
Agreed. Agreed.
And the other issue is that we're programmed from generations and generations to look at people's expressions on their face. It's the first thing we look at usually when we see somebody. The way they answer questions, how they shift their eyes, what motions they make with their face, all tell us as humans whether they may be telling the truth or not. And it's very difficult with the mask for a trier of fact to look and get that feeling. So I'm hoping we get back to somewhat normal. And another issue that was raised was, if we get juries back, are they going to be wearing masks?
Yeah.
And that's not a good thing, because you look at jurors to see what expressions they're making in a trial.
I agree wholeheartedly. I mean, we are fortunate in a way. I have a 12-year-old daughter, and the world that she's living in now is so different than the world that I came up in, and I can't even imagine. I have the blessing, but also a bit of the curse of knowing what the normal sort of regular world was like. It's difficult to do our business. And what I'm hoping, Counselor, is that the folks who make these critical decisions, the executive branch, the judicial branch, in conjunction with advocates, are going to take a closer, more discerning look at matters and understand that we must critically separate the wheat from the chaff now. We don't really have the luxury now. We have limited resources and limited time, and we're all facing challenging circumstances that are unlike anything that any of us have ever comprehended or faced in a century. And knowing that, then perhaps some of the entrenched nature of the relationships and some of the more adversarial than necessary postures that folks took hopefully will go by the wayside, because we've got critical work to do. We need to make sure that we're able to tell the people who have problems from the people who are predators. And the predators need to be dealt with, and we need to make sure that we are protecting the public, especially our most vulnerable populations: children, the elderly, the disabled, people who are financially compromised, mental health, etc., relationships. We need to make sure we're putting our resources, because they are limited now, protecting those folks. And the people who have problems, we need to funnel some of our focus and our concentration and resources on rehabilitative efforts. And that's something we're very proud of, that we're really pushing forward in Springfield, and specifically with our specialty courts. So unfortunately, I don't see a break on the horizon anytime soon. But I will say this about both us as a species and us as a nation: we have prevailed before in very difficult circumstances. All of us, in some way, shape, or form, no matter where we come from or who we are. Our ancestors have prevailed in more difficult circumstances, I would offer, than even that we face today. So we have to have faith. We must continue to move forward, take the proper precautions, but also recognize there's always going to be some risk. There's risk in everything in life, but we must move forward. And so we have faith, and I hear you, because I feel the same way. I want to see a witness's face. I got to judge credibility. I got to make decisions when I'm selecting a jury. I got to make decisions so I believe in a motion to suppress. I got to make certain findings. So I'm not sure how we're going to cross that bridge. Maybe a see-through mask.
You have a wonderful reputation out there, and you're very compassionate and have a lot of common sense. And if this nominee has half of what you have, he's going to make a great judge.
That's awesome. He'd be lucky if he has half of what I have, but I think he's got more. I think he's going. I think he's going to
Thank you, Judge.
surprise us. Yes, sir. It was a pleasure seeing y'all. And Trevon, again,
We
congratulations.
love having you here, so keep coming back, will you?
I definitely will. I definitely will. We got some good candidates coming. Trevon is just the tip of the iceberg. So thank you.
All right, we'll be waiting.
All right. Sounds good.
Thank you, Judge.
Yes, sir. Take care.
And the next, we're going to hear Attorney Maury C. Poe. Did I pronounce that right?
Yes, you did. Good morning, members of the Governor's Council. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak on behalf of my friend, my colleague, Attorney Trevon Bailey. I've known Attorney Bailey for over 20 years. In fact, we met in law school. I believe he sold me a bar prep course at full price, no discount, when we were in law school. We were fellow law clerks with the attorney Hal Etkin in Springfield, Massachusetts. Attorney Bailey always sat in the big chair and made me sit in the side chair and work in the side office. I've known him for a very long time. One of the things that I do recall one of the things that I recall that is very important in my memory of Attorney Bailey was a Saturday morning when we were in law school, where we woke up at 7:30 in the morning and went over to the Boys and Girls Club on Acorn Street here in Springfield, Massachusetts, and we renovated a library. We were there early. There was maybe 3 other people there with us. We cleaned out the library. We did the floors. We painted. We did everything. And then around about 2 o'clock or so, everyone else showed up for the photo op. But I remember that Attorney Bailey was there for the work. He was there to do the work and to make a difference. And as 2 law school students, we decided to take our Saturday morning up and try to make a difference in the community here in Springfield. We studied for the bar together. We've shared office space. We've had 3 moves for over, I think for the last 15 years, we've shared office space. So I've seen Attorney Bailey. I can tell you that he's open-minded, he's respectful, he's compassionate, he's deliberate, and he's dependable. And I can tell you all that not just by observation, but I can also tell you that from the fact that I've worked with him. I've seen his interactions with clients. I've seen him in the courtroom. In fact, my first day in the Springfield District Court as a bar advocate, Attorney Bailey brought me into the Springfield District Court, introduced me to Clerk Marino, introduced me to Judge Boyle, and then watched me fail. So he was very inspirational to me. He's younger than me by a few months, I believe, but he is also, he's very dependable. He's very serious about the work that we do. I think at one point we were told that when we were working for Attorney Etkin that the prior clerk was caught playing solitaire during work hours, and they were no longer there. So we were told that we were not to play games, and we never played games. We were serious about the law because we knew that individuals came to us in a dependent state, and they are often scared and confused. And what I saw Attorney Bailey do was he took those individuals, he worked with them, he talked to them, he learned what their needs and their desires were, and he advocated their position. Charles Hamilton Houston has said it, that a lawyer is either a social engineer or a parasite on society. Attorney Bailey is truly a social engineer. He's highly skilled, he's perceptive, he's sensitive, he understands the law, he understands how those various aspects of the law need to be explored and worked with in order to try to get a just result for our clients. And that's what he's done over the years. Being in private practice with Attorney Bailey, I've seen him dedicate his life not only to making a difference, but he told me one time, I asked him why he got involved with the Hampden County Bar Association. And he said that, he thought it was important to be very involved in the community, to really understand the community needs, the lawyers, and he got involved with the Hampden County Bar Association, and he became the first African-American president of the Hampden County Bar Association. Attorney Bailey's an outstanding nomination. I commend the governor for making this nomination. I commend the Governor's Council for considering this. I urge you to support this nomination and support Attorney Bailey in going forward. I thank him for his friendship over the years. I attended his wedding. I met his son. I've he's just a great guy, and he's an incredible lawyer. And it's been a wonderful journey, and I'm glad his journey continues. Thank you, and I'm open for any questions that the Governor's Council may have.
Counselor Kennedy.
The judge indicated that he was just the tip of the iceberg. Are you next?
When my time is right, my time will be my time.
Well, you're only a few months younger than him, so is it a few months we're waiting?
Probably more than that. I'm in a different category than Judge Gross and Attorney Bailey. I have older children. I have 3 kids in college who are all at UMass. 21-year-old and a set of twins who are 18-year-old. So got a lot of work to do over the. We're still.
We're going to be waiting.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the attorney? Let me ask you, attorney, did you grow up going to the Boys Club in Springfield?
I did not. I'm actually a transplant to Springfield. I'm originally from New Orleans, Louisiana, but I'm a transplant to Springfield. Boys Club has always been a vital part of my life and everything that I've done. So I thought it would be important for us to try to get involved with the family center here in Springfield.
I used to go and do some work at the old Boys Club on Chestnut Street before you were born.
Thank you.
It's good to have you here, and if you want, we'll hold up his vote until he gives you back the money for those law materials.
No, please don't do that.
All right. Hey, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bob,
Yes.
I just wanted to say that I've known Attorney Poe as someone who appeared before me, and he is every bit as good as Judge Gross or Trevon. They're class acts all the way. It's good to see Maurice, and hopefully someday they'll be coming before the council too.
Thank you, Councilor Hurley.
All right.
Well, Attorney Poe, I think you're doing okay with the council yourself. You better get your application in here.
Thank you very much.
All right. The next is Carmen Lozada Carroll. She's an office manager in the clerk's office in Springfield District Court. Are you on the big screen?
Yes, I am.
Where are you?
Hi,
Oh, there you are. Now we can see you.
here I am.
You're on. The whole world is
Good
watching.
morning. Carmen Lozada Carroll, presently the office manager of the Springfield District Court Clerk's Office, but I previously served as a session clerk for 27 years. Can you see it? I'm sorry? Member of the trial court for almost 40 years. I have known Attorney Bailey for 20 of those years when he first came to Springfield to practice law. I was honored when he asked that I speak to the Governor's Council on his behalf. Daily conversation on nomination. I know that if given the opportunity to make a judge, so outstanding. For all this time comes in contact for professional while maintaining positive working relationship with opposing parties. His passion for his while parent parties where he is in court, he is always pure. He take on whatever the day may bring. Attorney Bailey has a great temperament. I have never seen him lose his temper. He is patient, and his intelligence and common sense through how well he represents those through clients. He has earned the respect of his clients. Importantly, he doesn't just say stuff. Integrity, but doesn't not to support this nomination. He is responsible for the opportunity to speak here on his behalf today.
Can you hear us?
Counselor?
You hear us?
Yeah,
We
yeah.
can't
Did you
hear
hear me?
you.
Yeah, did you? You
We
can't hear
can
me?
see you, but we can't hear you.
Oh,
Now we can.
do you want me to say what I said all again? Can you hear me now or
Oh,
again?
no.
Yeah. Are you all done? Well, those were very fine remarks. I'm glad he treats the clerk's office with kindness, because that's important.
Counselor?
What? I was talking.
Did you? Everybody that.
Okay, Councilor Devaney says she wants to talk to you.
Thank you for participating as a witness. Can you tell me about your interaction? How often do you see this nominee? And tell me about that.
Lost her.
We're not getting her. We're not getting her.
Miss
The joys of
Carroll,
Zoom.
it might be a good idea to turn off the video and just have the audio for now.
Their names.
Miss Carroll, if you can hear us, I would turn off the video, I would mute your video and keep your audio on. Your bandwidth is low, so it cannot handle the video.
Oh, dear.
Excuse me, can you hear me? Well, we
Yes.
thank you very much for coming on and taking the time to come on and tell us what you know about this nominee. That's very important to us so we can make an informed decision. And I like hearing from people in the clerk's office. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other witnesses on behalf of the nominee? I think Mr. Franco is coming on, but he's going to come on a little later. So we'll put him on when he comes on. Anybody coming in on against the nominee? Anybody on the video against the nominee? Hearing none, we will now hear from the nominee. Tell us why we should vote for you.
Thank you very much. Good morning. Before I begin, I would like to start by thanking the Governor's Council for holding this confirmation hearing to consider my qualifications for Associate Justice of the District Court. It is an honor and privilege to be here. I want to thank Governor Charles Baker and Lieutenant Governor Karen Polito for their nomination. I feel humbled by the awesome responsibility that they have entrusted in me. If confirmed, I pledge to you and the Governor's office that I will do everything in my power to live up to the enormous trust placed in me to serve the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. I would like to thank Bob Ross, Lauren Green Petrino, and their staff for their advice and guidance through this process. I would also want to thank the JNC and the JBC for recommending me for my nomination to the Governor's office. Lastly, I would like to thank Judge Charles Gross, Attorney Maurice Poe, and Carmen Lozada Carroll, otherwise known as Peachy in the Springfield District Court, who testified on my behalf. I appreciate all of them taking the time out of their busy schedules to appear here today in support of my nomination. I am the proud and grateful son of William and Gina Bailey. My father, who was the youngest of 4 children, was raised in Plainfield, New Jersey. His family struggled to make ends meet, so college did not seem like a possibility. When he was in high school, he was told by a guidance counselor that he should consider taking a trade because people who looked like my father are not college material. Not to be deterred, my father graduated high school and enrolled in Benedict College in South Carolina. He graduated with a business management degree. My father was the first and only person in his family to go to college. He worked until his retirement in the accounting field. My mother never knew her father and was abandoned at an early age by her mother. My mother was raised in Cranford, New Jersey by a woman she believed to be her grandmother. Since little money was available, my mother had to work at the age of 13 while going to school. She, like my father, was discouraged to consider higher education, but she realized that an education would be her only salvation. She graduated high school and enrolled in nursing school at New Jersey College of Medicine and Dentistry, becoming a registered nurse. She worked as a pediatrics nurse for most of my childhood. When I was older, she decided to resume her studies. She enrolled in Southern New Hampshire University, where she graduated with a degree in Health and Human Services. Her thirst for knowledge and advancement still not satisfied, my mother enrolled in Western England College School of Law as a night student. After completing a 4-year program, she graduated with a Juris Doctorate the same year that I graduated college. To both my parents, the value of a good education was the only way for them to escape poverty. My parents instilled the importance of education on my brother and me. In our household, there was never a question of if we were going to college. It was simply a matter of when. Through my parents, I learned perseverance, toughness, and a relentless work ethic. They also taught us that we should be charitable whenever possible. I also inherited qualities from my parents. From my father, I get my demeanor and my even temperament. From my mother, I get my passion, thirst for knowledge, compassion, and empathy. These attributes shaped the person that I have become. My journey into the law began in my early teens. I watched a TV show about lawyers. I thought it seemed like a cool thing to do, even though I really wasn't sure what they actually did. But soon I learned that lawyers are simply in the business of helping people. For that reason, the more I learned about the profession, the more I wanted to pursue it. In 2001, my career started at the law office of Hal Ecken, where I worked as an associate. He ran a small litigation firm with a concentration on criminal defense, personal injury, and family law. I soon discovered that these same areas would become the foundation of my own practice. During this period, I had the opportunity for the first time to go to court to observe hearings and trials. This is where my passion to be in court started. In 2001, I also started my own law practice. I focused on criminal defense, personal injury, family law, contractual disputes, and some employment discrimination cases. As I gained more experience, my law practice grew. I also became more committed to helping others. I applied and was accepted to the Bar Advocate program. This allowed me to fully immerse myself in litigation and public service. Through this work, I was able to bridge the access to justice gap that is inherent in the legal system. My clients were people facing a variety of social problems like addiction, personality disorders, and mental health challenges. I was honored to serve their needs and help change their lives in a positive manner. My interest in public service led me to become involved with the Hampden County Bar Association. After a few years as a director, I was elected by my peers as president of the organization. During my time as president, I was able to help with the expansion of the legal clinic that functions as a pro bono arm of the Bar Association. I am very proud of my work to expand the legal clinic because it will continue to help many needy people in the community beyond my tenure as president. In 2017, I pursued additional public service by volunteering at the Springfield District Court Drug Court. Early in 2017, I had a high school friend die from a drug overdose. My friend's death made me angry and ashamed that I did not know about his struggles. I was not there to help him when he needed it. During this time, I was looking for answers. I wanted to see if there was a way that I could do something to help fight the opioid epidemic. I found my answer as a drug court advocate. I was able to work with people suffering from opioid addiction on a weekly basis to help their recovery. The drug court has had numerous successful outcomes. In speaking with the graduates, they attributed the drug court as an instrumental in saving their lives. In my career, I am most proud of my involvement with this specialty court. I believe that my 19-year career has aptly prepared me to be an associate justice of the district court. I have litigated and tried both criminal and civil cases, including small claims and supplementary process hearings in the district court. I have handled numerous restraining orders, harassment orders, and Section 35 petitions. In the Superior Court, I have litigated and tried both criminal and civil cases. In the Family Court, I have represented clients in divorce, custody disputes, and child support matters. In the Juvenile Court, I have represented children in delinquencies and care and protection cases. In representing clients in all these areas, I always respectfully treated and represented them to the best of my ability. If confirmed by this council, I will use these experiences to guide me on the bench to better serve the Commonwealth. In addition to my education, career, and experiences, another important factor in my life would be my wife and my son. Without them by my side, I would not be sitting here before you. To put it simply, they are my world. My wife and I were blessed to have a 5-year-old son named Miles. My wife, she is the glue that holds our family together. After 13 years of marriage, she is still my strongest advocate and my most trusted friend. It is easy for me to say without her love and support, I would not be as a success as I am today. Thank you, Jessica. As I sit here today before you, I believe that my professional and personal experiences have prepared me for this most important calling. The obstacles I have overcome will help me to be a very good district court judge. As I have been told, I am fair, open-minded, hardworking, empathetic, and decisive. I am ready to make the hard decisions when they are the right decision. I will always strive to ensure my decisions are firmly grounded upon the law. These are the qualities that I believe are most important in a judge. I want to thank you for taking the time to listen to me, offer my qualifications for the position of Associate Justice in the Cambridge District Court. And with that, I would be happy to answer whatever questions the council has. Thank you very much.
Okay, Councilor Iannella? Gone. Councilor Hurley? Councilor Hurley?
I'm right here,
Yes.
Counselor. I'm right here. Do you hear me?
All right. I moved on to Councilor Hurley. Councilor Hurley, go ahead.
I'll yield to Councilor Iannella.
Thank you very
Okay,
much, Counselor.
Iannella, you're up.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure to hear from you, sir. I don't have any questions. Your counselor, Counselor Juvenville, is a strong supporter of yours. I've talked and spoken to a few people who know you. You seem to be compassionate, fair, and I think you're going to be a great addition to the court system, and I wish you well. I'd be more than happy to support you next week.
Thank you, Councilor Iannella.
Thank you. Councilor Hurley?
Yes. I know Trevon Bailey as someone who appeared before me as an attorney in the district court, mostly in Springfield. I have no questions because I have been able to observe him firsthand. He was always prepared. He had credibility as an attorney in terms of what he represented to the court, which is not always the case with attorneys, unfortunately. We have spoken over the last few weeks numerous times, and I would say that he has the empathy, the compassion, the drive, and the ability to always be prepared and to give people a second chance. The district court is the court of second chances. And at the same token, he also realizes when representing a client who had a lot of difficulty and a lot of problems that sometimes they had to go. So he's been on both sides of the ledger when it comes to that. And I think he's going to do an outstanding job. So congratulations, and you've got my vote.
Thank you, Councilor Hurley.
Thank you, Councilor Hurley.
Councilor Duff. Councilor Duff.
Can you hear me, sir? Can you hear me, Counselor?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, super. Great to be here today. Yeah, this is a fine nomination, but I would like to ask you a few questions. you've been a practitioner for quite a while. What do you see as the biggest challenge facing the district courts today?
Obviously, with the pandemic that we're in, I believe that the biggest challenge right now is trying to figure out how best to actually serve the public while also ensuring that the public continues to stay safe. This pandemic has ravished a lot of people. It has unfortunately killed a lot of victims. And as we are administering justice which is an important and integral function, but as we are administering justice, we need to do so in a way that is very safe and responsible as far as trying to make sure that the public is not impacted in a negative way by coming to the courthouses.
Okay. Have you ever represented, or what is your experience working with the LGBTQI community in the courts?
Yes, I've represented, I actually represented a transgender, one of the transgender community. It was she was transitioning into a woman, and it was a very difficult representation in the sense that there were a lot more of that we had to consider in trying to represent her beyond the legal aspects of her case. In her particular instance, she was looking at being held in the House of Correction for a period of time. And I remember having to speak with the House of Corrections to make sure that they would be comfortable with her going in as a woman while transitioning, and that also that was what her wishes were in order to be perfectly safe in an environment where she felt most comfortable. The judge that was presiding over the case was particularly compassionate and empathetic about the circumstance, and allowed us the freedom to be able to explore that particular issue for my client. And so I was very appreciative of that. So yes, that would be my experience.
Did the I don't know if you said she was going to prison or jail, but were they accommodating?
She was going to the House of Corrections and jail, and so they were extremely accommodating. They understood what we were talking about. I had to go up the ladder a little bit in order to make sure that I got the right person to be able to talk to about it. But they were extremely accommodating as far as what her particular needs were going to be, and made sure that while she was there, not only was she safe, but she was also comfortable as much as she could be in being incarcerated.
Right. How about any younger gay or lesbian or bisexual people? Have you ever encountered them in the court system or in any capacity?
I have. It wasn't necessarily a big part of the actual case, though, in the sense that, whatever the issue might have been, it was strictly the legal issue itself. The fact that they were either gay or bisexual or whatever their sexual orientation was almost immaterial to the representation.
Right. Great. The reason I ask is because, as you and I spoke about earlier, and it's exacerbated during the time of COVID, which is just a surreal, unusual time for people. We have kids in this Commonwealth who are not accepted at home and feel unsafe in foster homes, and are therefore often living on the streets and sometimes prostituting themselves to survive, and committing other crimes as well. And I feel very strongly, as I've said many times, it doesn't absolve somebody of the crime, but we need to understand why this is happening and what we can do better to keep these kids safe, because it is our responsibility as adults, as possibly judges, as attorneys, and as elected officials to make sure that they are safe, especially in Massachusetts, especially in the United States. This is critical that we take care of our kids. The next question is, the disabilities community. Have you encountered in your time as a trial attorney, either in any capacity whatsoever, dealing with somebody who may have, and I'm generalizing because there's so many different things this could fall into, but perhaps somebody who was on the spectrum that perhaps counsel didn't realize at the time that they may have been on the spectrum, and any experiences with that at all?
I have.
Probably in his car too.
What comes to mind almost immediately is a young man that I represented. He was a victim of a traumatic brain injury. What ended up happening to this gentleman was that he was hit by a moving vehicle as a young kid, and he ended up obviously suffering the trauma of the actual impact with the motor vehicle, but also with the trauma with the street itself after being hit. And as a result of that, his IQ was dramatically affected. And so kind of to speak to him, he was very deliberate in his mannerisms. He was deliberate in his conversation. But, he did comprehend, he could speak to you about what was going on with him. But you needed to be more patient with him in order to kind of get to where you wanted to go. In his situation, what he ended up happening to him was that he was taken advantage of by some other kids. And they basically had him kind of pulling along with them to kind of commit some type of criminal act. And they kind of put him up to it. And that ended up violating his probation. And so we had to deal with both of those issues, the underlying pretrial issue and also the violation of probation issue. And part of my representation with him was to have him evaluated by a doctor to find out exactly where he was, so that I could educate the court on how they should treat him. And because there wasn't a competency issue per se, but ultimately, this was a young man that was not very sophisticated and easily could be manipulated. And so for that reason, I wanted to be able to make a full presentation to the court, and I was able to do so in a way where the court felt very comfortable with the recommendation that was jointly made between myself, the district attorney's office, and the probation department. It may not have been appropriate based upon the facts and circumstances of the crime itself, but under his particular circumstances and the way he presented, it became more appropriate when you understood what his limitations were and where he was at. And so that's my experience.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And again, this is a personal issue for me, having somebody who was challenged in their life, and having worked still extensively with the disabilities community, and frankly with people in the mental health community. I was privileged to be a fellow at Mass General in the psych unit, and you see things there that you really with mental illness that people really almost cannot imagine. Yet when these are our fellow citizens, and it is our responsibility to make sure that they are accommodated and that they are safe and that they are treated fairly. And again, it doesn't absolve somebody of a crime, but your example, I thought was so important, is that sometimes people with a different capacity than you and I may have are much more easily manipulated. And so then how does one address that and deal with it? So I thank you for your thoughtfulness on that. It is, to me, again, critically important that we take care of those who often can't advocate for themselves. And lastly, I just want to thank you for your work in the drug courts, in your advocacy for the community. As you and I spoke about, I'm thrilled that addiction has become kind of a political du jour issue today. Yet my fear in what I see in reality is, in my opinion, again, having worked extensively with addicts, that the survival rate off of addiction is so low and the cost is so high. To really put together a really holistic program that could probably have great success, I'm not sure that the Commonwealth on any level is willing to make that investment. And it's tragic, but it's just the truth. But that said, I hail from Gloucester today, and we have an incredibly successful program with the PARI program and with the Angel program. And their success rates are really, really tremendous. And again, I think it speaks to the fact that a more holistic approach sometimes can be helpful in also giving addicts the opportunity to turn themselves in and not be prosecuted and get help instead. And it has made a huge, huge difference. And it's really quite an honor to be a citizen of Gloucester and see how our police conduct themselves when it comes to these issues. It's huge. So my last thing is, are you mostly in Springfield Court now? Is that where most of your practice is?
Yes, that would be where the majority of my practice is.
Okay. So before the pandemic, is it, and this isn't a trick question or anything, and we didn't talk about it, but I'm really curious, how good is the public transportation out there? And how easy is it? How accessible is court for people who don't have money and don't have means?
That is a constant problem, not necessarily for Springfield, but some of the outlying courts like Palmer or Westfield, some of the courts that are a little bit more spread out. There are bus lines, particularly in Springfield, Chicopee, Holyoke, those type of courthouses, and I do believe that the community does take advantage of that. Every now and again, you hear there are some difficulties with that, whether they're not running on time or somehow someone has missed, whatever the bus that they were trying to catch. But it's
Right.
really predominantly just bus as far as public transportation out there.
Yeah. It's again an issue I care very much about, because I don't think I spent most of my adult life in big cities. I went to college in a big city and I lived in big cities, so you didn't need a car. You had public transportation, and I happened to live in cities that had great public transportation. And then I come home to Massachusetts, where it's almost non-existent, in my opinion, anyway. But I'm always concerned that how can we say we have access to justice when people literally can't get to court? And it's usually poor people who can't. And again, it's just one more burden that I think we need to be more creative about how we address it. And of course, I have a million ideas about that, but I won't waste anyone's time with it. But thank you so much for sharing your story and your thoughts and your time with us today. I have no further questions, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duff.
Thank you,
Councillor
Councilor
Ferreira.
Duff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I echo the sentiments shared by Councilor Duff. I thank you for your service, especially to the drug court. You and I have had a couple of conversations. It's good to see you live. As Councilor Jubenville said, it's hard to size people up without seeing them. And I can see you, and I think your demeanor is going to be excellent when you sit on the bench. I did my due diligence after I spoke with you. I spoke with Councilor Hurley, former judge, who's a huge fan. And I take what Mary tells me seriously, because she sat there when you were before her. I also spoke with Sharon Casey, because I know you went through the interview process with Sharon, who's now the clerk-magistrate in Cambridge. And she also had very, very good things to say about you. So I'm going to congratulate you in advance. I told you earlier that you do have my vote. I think you're going to be a great judge. And congratulations on the nomination, sir.
Thank you, Councilor Ferreira.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councilor Farrar. Councilor Devaney.
Thank you. Nice to see you again.
Good to see you as well.
I first want to thank you for meeting with me during a pending snowstorm. And I have to say that it's not something I support, but you are required to complete our Governor's Council questionnaire at least, and it's written in, at least 8 days before your hearing. We got your name and you were notified 6.5 days before your hearing. I've been here long enough. I know from nominees how long it takes to fill out that questionnaire. You want to be exact about everything that you say under pain of penalty. So I thank you for that, and I'm sorry, because people don't realize you can't have someone come as a witness at a drop of a hat. They have a schedule, they have life, they have work. So I do want to thank you for that. The other thing is that congratulations on the nomination.
Thank you.
And congratulations, no political contributions. How refreshing. So having said that, now let's go back to how your journey you came, okay? Now, you had applied twice before?
That's
Tell me
correct.
about that.
I applied in 2013 and then again in 2017. My application didn't go further than that, just the actual applying. I received a letter from the JNC letting me know that my applications were no longer going forward.
So, you know, I'll tell you, it meant so much for me to meet with you. It's very important for me to know the real person, the whole person that's going to be on the bench, not just paperwork or on the phone. It's important to me, and I learned a lot about you. I have said many times, I will not vote for anyone who doesn't have compassion and empathy. And you absolutely have had it in your private life, in your public life. And, you know, when I saw your mother was having financial problems, she was going to lose her home, and you were a young man, and you stepped in, bankruptcy. Why don't you tell us about it?
So right around the time period when I was in law school, or actually just about to graduate law school, my family, my parents were going through a divorce, and they were having financial difficulty, and that financial difficulty resulted them in actually losing their home to foreclosure. And so when they finally split up, my mother ended up moving to an apartment, and because she was in the apartment, she you know, was trying to save money, but still the financial difficulties continued to follow. And so I'm sure in an act of desperation, she was requesting that I be able to lend her or give her some money to be able to help her out with trying to make ends meet. And so, as I stated, I was just about to leave law school, so I really hadn't established myself in any way financially. But what I did have was very good credit. And so, as a result of trying to help her out with the desire to want to help her out, I borrowed against my credit in order to be able to lend her, you know, large sums of money. And unfortunately, what happened was that as it occurred, I ended up getting behind and not able to actually keep up with that. And as a result of which, it started to snowball. And my financial difficulties became overwhelming. And the only answer that I had was to file for bankruptcy. I certainly appreciate the fact that that type of law is there to kind of give you a clean slate or a second chance. I certainly would, if I had any other option, would have done so. If I had a rich uncle or someone else that I could have gone to, I certainly would have tried to take that route, but I didn't have that available, and so it was the only opportunity for me to be able to get a clean slate. And so for that, I was happy and certainly grateful that was available. And also, I have no regrets about being able to help my mother. I learned a lot of valuable lessons, though, in the process that I think that are going to make me a lot more empathetic on the bench. When people come before me who have financial difficulties, who have been through things, who have problems making ends meet, I can certainly relate to them. I don't even have to try to stretch my mind there. I've been there, and so I understand what that is. I'm just fortunate to be able to be in a position where I may be able to give them the type of justice that they so duly deserve.
Well, I have such respect for you for that, because imagine a law student, you could have been forced to drop out of school, all of that. So obviously, you weren't born with a silver spoon in your mouth, and that means a lot to me. It also means a lot that, all your uncles and relatives are not sitting on a bench. You're here representing yourself the old-fashioned way, and I appreciate that. Now, tell me the process of your interview with the JNC. There's 21 attorneys that have the most awesome responsibility that none of us on the council have. Our only responsibility is to vote yes or no on one person. We don't even know how many applied for that position. But these 21 people decide if they're going to interview that person who applied and decide if that's the person they're going to recommend to the governor. So it's incumbent on those 21 attorneys to fulfill the responsibility that the governor has given them to attend all of the nominees' hearings before they vote. They're voting on a lifetime position. So having said that, tell me how many of those 21 were present at your hearing?
Well, my hearing took place July 28th. It was a little bit of a blur, but I believe because it was on a Zoom format, there were approximately 9 to 12 people that were
9 people.
or on the screens.
Okay. See, I have a big concern about this because people who are appointed on that JNC did not come, did not hear the hearing, did not talk to the nominee, have never met the nominee, and yet they vote. So it's not your responsibility, and I'm glad you're here, and thank you for reapplying. I've seen it so often in my 21 years, someone who's come after you've applied twice. And I know very well, sometimes it's a political person that jumps the line. And so I am so pleased that you did apply again, and that you were appointed by the governor. So, I love your background. I mean, you have had divorces, child custody, visitation, child support, alimony, from traffic violations to violent crimes, okay? So you bring a lot to the bench. And I personally, and I've seen it in the past few years, the rise of violent crimes has increased so much, and it's all around my little water town. Over a week ago, a few streets away from me, there was a murder of a road rage. A man ran over, killed the other person. I think it was racial, but I'm not involved in that. Will not be involved with that trial. But I'm saying that I believe we need people with the experience of having criminal cases. It's absolutely necessary in this society and the climate that we are living in. I have a philosophy you might not agree with, but I think if you are a lawyer and you have not had criminal cases and you're appointed as a judge, you will be timid, indecisive on sentencing. And that's why I think it's important that you've seen it all. Now, the other thing is that I was impressed that you had 2 pages of programs that you have taught or you lectured. The other thing is the compassion coming in, your pro bono work. I haven't seen so much pro bono work as you have and has had. And one of the things that I want to ask you about is about the Bar Association. And you served for 4 years on that, from 2015, I believe, to 2019. And I was impressed about that. Can you tell us about that?
Well, technically, I'm still a member and serve on the board as an ex officio past president, but I've been on the board of directors of the Hampden County Bar Association since, I believe, 2012. And I was always involved with all the charitable programs that they had, whether it be Lawyer on the Line or dealing with, which is a program that allows attorneys to be able to sit on a phone and take phone calls from the public. We don't know who's calling, but we basically will give free legal advice for a period of time. It gets advertised in the newspaper, and it's something that's really good about helping the community. And so as I got more involved with the different committees and programs to kind of help our members be able to take to have access to the Bar Association, I became very interested in wanting to take a leadership track. And I started out as a treasurer, and then rose from a treasurer to a president-elect, and then from president-elect to president of the organization.
So yeah, that's a criminal law. It's criminal law section. Is that what was called that you served on? That was the Mass Bar Criminal Law Section Council?
No, I'm sorry.
That's what I was asking. I appreciate that, but I was impressed by, the 4 years that you served and the purpose of the Criminal Law Section Council.
I misunderstood. I apologize. The Section Council through the Mass Bar Association is a group of lawyers and judges who get together. We discuss the whatever might be happening in the legislature as far as different laws that may be coming. Most recently, we're talking about the criminal reform and the stuff that was going on this summer. But also, what happens is we had speakers come in and educate us on what might be going on. We've had different senators come in and talk to us with the purpose of being able to create educational programs for the Mass Bar Association, and also to recommend that we have a stance as the Mass Bar Association on whatever criminal issues that may happen. So what we do is we would create a recommendation that would go to the House of Delegates, which is the formal body of the Mass Bar Association, and make a proposal as to how we feel that the Mass Bar Association should officially stand on a particular issue. If they agree with our stance, then they may end up going and lobbying that information to the legislature as a whole. So it was a good organization. It was a fun organization, and I think we did a lot of good work there.
We also talked about your involvement in drug court. And you got involved because of a close friend who OD'd on drugs, and you felt responsible that you weren't there for him, and so that's how you got involved in drug court. And I didn't know whether these specialty courts were really effective, so I investigated and I did get involved in it. I want to let's hear from you about your involvement in drug court.
So as you already framed, the catalyst to get me into drug court was a tragic event. It was a kid that I grew up with in high school. He was the point guard of our basketball team. I was extremely close to him in high school. And when I heard about his death, it rocked me, and I really didn't know exactly what to do. And as luck would kind of have it, sometimes fate steps in and gives you an answer when you're least expecting it. It gave me the opportunity to serve and volunteer my time at the Springfield District Court Drug Court. That was back in 2017. The drug court is an intensive probation for people who are usually they're considered to be high risk, high need community in the sense that they have some type of very a background of an addiction that's taken hold of them for an extended period of time, and that they're facing some significant incarceration time if they were to go a traditional route on probation. And what it does is it allows them to be able to have a lot of resources that other folks that are coming through the probation department that don't. They get a dedicated probation officer, they get a dedicated recovery coach, they get a dedicated drug court advocate who is an attorney, and then they also get access to a judge who's dedicated to their recovery on a weekly basis. And just like Judge Gross has already articulated for you very well, that it's not a 9-to-5 job at all. There's weekends, there's nights, there's overnights, there's everything. And my job as a drug court advocate allowed me to kind of roll up my sleeves and kind of get into it with this community and kind of take the ups and downs with them as they went along. It's unique to any other type of representation I've ever had in my career, in the sense that I spend at least 18 months with this particular client. And, you know, we have very intimate conversations about how they get involved in drugs, how those drugs take over their lives, how they've impacted their lives. And it becomes extremely emotional for us. We take the highs and the lows. There have been folks who have not woken up the next morning as a result of drug overdoses. We've lost people in our drug court. And so we take every one of those extremely personal. And that's why we, as Judge Gross has already told you, that's why we celebrate the successes and the miracles that we see the way that we do. It's a unique experience. If you haven't been able to do it, I would suggest that anyone should come and view it and watch it, because I believe in miracles, because I've seen them weekly on a weekly basis for the last 3 years.
No, I think that was great that you got involved in that. Like most people, I'm very concerned about the increase in drug traffic. It doesn't seem to be lessening. I have 2 friends who lost 2 sons to overdose on heroin. And so that's why it was important to me to find out really, what does the drug court do? Very impressed. I'm very impressed with it. And, I keep saying to no avail that they should be having money in the budget to have treatment centers, for more treatment centers. 3 isn't enough. 1 for the women, that's not enough. But having said that, I did go to the drug court graduation. I will never forget that experience. I sat in the back and tears came to my eyes to hear these people, one at a time, who graduated from the drug, from the drug program, and decades of being addicted, and telling how this changed their lives and what they have done with their lives. Some of them were really older too. So it is impressive. So I thank you for that. Now, I have to say, and I have to tell you this, I love your name, Trevon. First name is William. And I just couldn't help telling my family that Bill Bailey was appearing before the Governor's Council. So, having said that, but, okay, let's talk about philosophy. What about minimum mandatory sentencing? What's your position?
With regards to minimum mandatory sentencing, I am not in favor of it. I believe that anything, obviously the legislature has its place in directing what should happen as a result of violation of laws. But I believe that anything that takes away the discretion of a judge for making a sound, just decision based upon the character of the person that stands before them, any mitigating factors that are presented to them, information about the facts and circumstances of the crime itself. I don't think that it's really justice by treating everybody the same, because everyone who comes before the court isn't the same. They deserve to have their day in court and to be able to present their case in the best way possible, and to limit a judge's ability to be able to administer justice in that way. I just wouldn't be in favor of it.
I liked what you wrote in our questionnaire about the most important attributes of a judge. And number one, you put honesty. People don't put that, but that's the whole ball game. If you're not honest, then you shouldn't be on the bench. And I loved what you said about that. And you included compassionate, which we don't always see. And I think that is so important, to have a judge that has apathy. We have seen in the past years a lot of egregious things that have happened in our court from judges. Now, I'm going back to the drug lab. And do you think that justice was carried out on that case?
Well, I'm a little bit unclear exactly what aspect of it, because there was a lot of legislation and a lot
Well, there's a lot of people that were released that shouldn't have been. Some that weren't released that should have been. So, I've always said you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. So what's your feeling about that?
Well, I believe that the scandal that occurred in the state with regards to drugs was shameful. I think that hiding evidence or manipulating evidence in any way is not justice. There were a lot of people who were unnecessarily incarcerated as a result of it, and incarcerated for a long period of time as a result of it. And you can't, as you've already stated, put the toothpaste back in the tube, and therefore you can't give them that time back. And I know folks who have been incarcerated for 5 plus, maybe even 10 years as a result of that. And so that damage is done. And, it's not enough to just say, I'm sorry, and that we didn't mean anything about it, or that type of attitude. There should be some type of safeguards in place moving forward to make sure that something like this never happens again. I would also state that, the other aspect of the case was the cover-up by the AG's office. Again, that was also problematic and certainly shameful. And again, I would cite the fact that people were injured in a way that you cannot adequately compensate them for. And so for that reason, you know, again, I think that there were certain safeguards that were missed and that didn't exist at the time, that hopefully are in place now to kind of make sure that something like that never happens again.
Okay, and in the same aspect of philosophy, would there be any reason that you would turn off a recorder when you're on the bench?
No.
Okay, this doesn't come up, but it's a concern. Gun permits. Do you think that law should be changed, or do you think it should continue that the individual local police chief makes that decision?
Well, you know, I'm a proponent of the Second Amendment, and I believe in people's right to bear arms. I believe that as long as they're doing it responsibly and taking all the precautions in doing so, obviously it's their right. With regards to the hearings themselves and how people acquire them in Massachusetts, I've represented folks who have done so, and they told me that they felt as if that the process wasn't necessarily fair, and that they may have been treated unfairly because of a variety of different reasons. So it becomes a little bit of a political situation in the sense that if you don't have a good relationship with your chief of police, it may impact your ability to be able to earn a gun permit. And so from that standpoint, you know, there's obviously a potential of some type of problem for the citizens themselves. Obviously, they get a right to appeal as well.
Okay, so how can I say that? All right, first of all, when we talked about this, what case stands out on your mind that you had that was the most rewarding, you had the most rewarding result?
I would have to go back to my days in the drug court. Judge Gross kind of stole my thunder when he talked about my client, but she was my first client in drug court, and I was not really kind of aware as to what that was going to be like to be an advocate. Obviously it was her first time with the program. And so we kind of felt it out together. And, you know, we had highs and lows, ups and downs. You know, her recovery was not linear in any stretch. She had a lot of problems. Her drug of choice was cocaine. And because of that, you know, there's a level of functioning that she was used to being on cocaine. And her MO was that she would have long periods of success, long periods of recovery. When I'm talking about long, I'm talking about 6-8 months at a time. And then she would get involved in self-sabotage. And it was that kind of cycle that would permeate through her life. And it happened while we were in the drug court. And I remember having to go to the women's correctional facility in Chicopee and sitting down with her and talking to her, and we talked about that particular aspect. And you know, we had a very good conversation, and I said to her, look, you need to figure out why you're here. You need to figure out why this has happened, why you continue to self-sabotage, why you continue to get to a point where things kind of fall off the cart, so to speak. And kind of left her with that type of homework. And when I came back to see her in a couple of days, she told me that she needed to double down on her therapy. She needed to figure that out and really concentrate on that. But that was really what the crux of her problem was. And eventually she ended up getting out of jail. She ended up getting back into the drug court. She ended up graduating. You know, I still talk to her even to this day. She told me just the other day that she's celebrating over just about 2.5 years of sobriety at this point and sustained recovery. She is, as Judge Gross already talked about, has gone back to school. She's trying to become a recovery coach. She's working for BHN in Springfield, looking to give back to the community that that she's been such a part of. And so I couldn't be more proud of her. And for me, it was the most rewarding part of my career. And I can say hands down that it was a pleasure to be able to represent her.
That's great. Now, there has to be disappointing results of a case that you've had. What stands out?
I have one case that stands out. I had a woman, I'm not going to use her name, but I had a woman who was, she was in her 40s. She had 2 children, 11-year-old boy, a 9-year-old girl. And she, about a year before I came into her life, her husband, it was right after Christmas, right around January sometime, early January. I guess he had been battling with depression. And one night he went into the bathroom while everyone was sleeping and hung himself. Unfortunately, the 9-year-old girl got up in the morning and found her father hanging in the bathroom. And what I understand, this was, if it wasn't her birthday, it was like right around within a day or two of her birthday. So as a result of this, she was acting out. And she was in school, but she was acting out. When I'm talking about acting out, she was, disrespectful to the teachers, saying things that were alarming, like, talking about death, talking about killing herself, talking about killing other people. She became a handful in the sense that they couldn't control her outbursts, or, she was hitting other teachers. And obviously this became problematic with the school system. The school system wanted to see the mother more active as far as trying to address these particular problems. When I got involved with her, it was because a care and protection was filed by the school district. The mother had explained to me that she had her in counseling, that she was providing her all types of different services, that she was always available to her to the extent that she was having difficulties in her employment, the amount of times that she had to run back and forth from her job to the school. And the attitude that she received from the school was, "You're not doing enough." And as a result of all that, there was a 72-hour hearing that was held. The purpose of that hearing is to make sure to decide whether or not the mother should continue to have custody of the daughter. We had a full hearing. There were quite a few. There was quite a few witnesses that testified. Uniquely to this particular case, DCF was actually on the side of the mother. They were not looking for this 72-hour hearing to occur. It was actually promulgated by the school district. And luckily we were able to get the judge to consider, although she did keep the care and protection open, she did not remove custody of the daughter from the mother, thinking that that would cause more harm than it ever would do any good. But this situation was obviously traumatic. It was traumatic to the mother. It was traumatic to the daughter. I actually went over to the house of the family to interview the mother, because she actually quit her job in order to be a stay-home mother so that she could give more time and be available to her kids. And in doing so, she ended up removing her daughter from the school system because she no longer trusts the school system. And I got an opportunity to interview not only her, but also interview the daughter as well. And she couldn't be more sweet, but obviously she was dramatically and tragically affected by the trauma that she had already gone through. And so this case stands out to me because what we do in the legal system, we try to help and benefit the lives of the people that come before us in some way. With this litigation, the way that it was done, the way that it continued, it was traumatic to this family. And I don't think that justice was served by putting her or this child or anybody else through this. And so it always stands out to me as a situation where justice just failed this family. And so I've always kept that in the back of my mind.
You know, like other people that I hear from, I'm concerned about some of the egregious actions of some judges. We've got great judges, but they're not all great. And you know, we don't have a crystal ball up here. And I have seen it through the years that sometimes a robe changes. That nominee that's sat before me and that I voted for and who has disappointed me. As an example, we had a judge that had an illegal immigrant before him. Well known by the police. They were trying to get him for a long time, big drug dealer. And I heard the tape, so this is not hearsay. The judge said to that man, if you were a citizen, I'd put you in jail. But you are an illegal immigrant providing for your family. And I'm going to give you a 2-year on probation, 2 years on probation. I'm asking you whether you have an illegal immigrant or you have a United States citizen, would you proceed any differently with your sentencing?
Obviously, I don't know all the circumstances as to what was presented to that
That's all it
particular
is. He was a
judge, but-
drug dealer. He even had compartments in his, concealed in his car. So if he was stopped at a traffic light, the police would never see any drugs in his car. They've been trying to get him for a long time. That's it. There's nothing more. A drug dealer, and the judge said, you're providing for your family, 2 years probation.
My philosophy with regards to sentencing is to be even across the board. I don't, to me, I'm going to listen to the facts and circumstances of the crime. I'm going to consider what mitigating factors are going to be presented to me. Whether someone's an illegal immigrant or whether or not they're a citizen of this country, it may be a factor. It depends on how it's actually presented to me. But I don't think that I would treat somebody better because they were an illegal immigrant than I would be a United States citizen. Neither would I treat them worse. I believe, when you look at the scales of justice, she's blind for a reason. And so that's how I plan on to administer justice, given the opportunity to do so.
Well, as the only full-time counselor, I really investigate. And the good news is that drug dealer went to federal court and is deported. They'll probably be back. They keep coming back, but that's the end of the story. That really has made such an impression on me that any judge would do that. I think especially, like I'm sure people in this room, I had 2 close friends, mothers. One, her only child, overdosed on heroin. My other friend, Frances, from Watertown. She came from Ireland. She's an Irish-American immigrant. And I knew him so personally. These aren't bad people. These aren't bad people that are getting addicted. I don't know why, I don't know how, but that's what's happening. And I don't want a judge to say you're providing for your family when that person that he gave probation to could well have been the dealer who gave the drugs that killed my friend's boys. So I'm very strong about that. And we talked about this pandemic, and I'm very concerned. And I told the governor, lieutenant governor, because he's on almost every day in TV, give a telephone number for domestic violence, for child abuse. I only heard it once, months and months ago. I'm concerned about it, especially child abuse, because there's people out there with mental issues, drug addictions, and they are isolated in these homes with these children, with their spouse. And I don't know what the answer is. I don't think we can do anything about it. On another note, I agree with my colleague, Councillor Jubenville. I hate Zoom. I hate the whole process of it. I like to see you sitting there, and I'm sitting here, and we're talking face to face. I can't believe you can really do justice, and I use the word justice, on a Zoom call. And you know what it reminds me of? I served on the Commission of Disability for 22 years. And I served with, I could cry because he died. I served with a wonderful, most intelligent man I ever met, Al Gazagian. He was totally blind from birth. And he went through a lot of discrimination because when he started out, there were no laws and they wouldn't hire a blind person. And amazingly, from a file clerk, he rose to be vice president of a leading insurance company. And you know what he said to me privately? Marilyn, I could never be president because when you negotiate, you have to look someone straight in the eye. And I think of that, and I think it applies so well to these attorneys who are trying to defend their clients and going into a Zoom situation. And I just pray we'll get through this pandemic and that things can go back to normal. Some of my friends, their business will never go back to normal. And I have 2 of my 4 children out of work permanently. So it's affecting everyone. I had 2 remaining sisters. One died of coronavirus alone in a nursing home. My other one's struggling. So I know there's people out there and I can identify with them. So I'm only saying that I don't know what's your opinion about this process. You're forced to do it. You're not going to see people in person. What's the solution to it? What's the advice to the lawyers?
Do the best you can. I
Yeah, I guess that's all we can say.
As I've been practicing in this time period, it's been very difficult. I echo some of the sentiments made by Councillor Jubenville with regards to some of the the clues that you get in body language that are lost. Zoom calls sometimes will short out or won't be as clear, and so you lose a lot there as well. All I can say is that whatever the new normal is that comes after this, we have to be mindful that there's a certain level of justice that we have become we've become accustomed to, and we should not try to skirt that or circumvent that just because it is convenient or somehow cheap or somehow better for the bottom line. These are people's lives that are at stake, and to be an attorney who's represented folks in this, you want to make sure that you're doing right by your client, and it's very difficult to do that in a total virtual.
Well, I have to say that you certainly have demonstrated to me in your public and private life that you're a caring person, you're compassionate, love your family, and put them before yourself and jeopardizing your future as a lawyer. So thank you for reapplying. Third time was the charm, I guess, and I hope this is a message to people who have been bypassed, who found out that the person that was nominated was not as qualified as he or she. And you saw that, and you're here now, and I can't be more pleased. And I want to thank you for all your time, because in addition to meeting with me on that, you actually drove home in the snow, that you also were so concerned about getting that governor's council questionnaire in. You drove to the State House before you met with me. I can't thank you enough, and I wish you all good luck, and thank you for applying, and thank you to the governor for appointing you.
Thank you, Councilor Devaney.
Thank you, Councilor Devaney. Councilor Kennedy.
Morning, I think it's still morning.
Morning.
We had a long talk on the phone, and we answered most of my questions, but I do have a few questions I want to go over with you. Many things have been covered, obviously. First, I want to start with a comment, and the comment has to do with diversity. One of the things that I have been fighting for since the time I started on this council is for a more diverse bench. I congratulate the governor for nominating you, because it does add to that diversity. I think that Governor Baker's done a tremendous job recently, especially in terms of diversifying the courts. But you also bring something else. You bring diversity in terms of your practice. Very few people come before us who do what you do, which is a mix of criminal and civil and probate. You won't be doing much probate in the district court, but you'll certainly be doing civil and criminal. You're kind of a throwback in that sense. I do criminal and civil, but very few. I'm sorry. Speak into the microphone. I'm sorry. Very few people who come before us have that diverse a background in terms of practicing law, and I think you bring something very valuable with respect to that. I want to talk to you about the civil side of things first. You indicated that you, in your questionnaire, that you handled a variety of civil cases, mostly torts, car accident cases, slip and falls, and things of that nature. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So you deal with insurance companies on a regular basis. Is that fair to say?
That'd be fair to say.
Okay. One of the things I want to talk about is 93A claims. I've written hundreds and hundreds of 93A letters where I thought insurance companies were acting not particularly ethically, fairly in terms of the way they treated my clients. And I assume that you've written some as well.
I have.
You ever get 93A damages from a judge?
I have.
Well, then you have an exception. Okay, how many times has that happened?
Just once.
Yeah, exactly. It seems as though 93A has completely, and 176D, which deals with specifically with insurance companies, has completely lost its teeth, especially in the district courts. Would you agree with that?
I think so. I think it also has to do with the fact that not a lot of civil cases are actually going to trial, so you don't even get there a lot of times. But
well, the ones that go to trial because the insurance companies pick which ones go to trial.
That's
because
correct.
The ones that they have to settle, they're going to settle. They're not going to take the risk of a substantial verdict. But sometimes they act very unreasonably, and cases go to trial, and plaintiffs sometimes win, right?
That's correct.
Okay. And you would agree with me that it's rare that a district court judge, because at that point it's up to the judge, would award 93A damages?
I would agree with that.
Okay. Why do you think that is?
I don't know. I think it's a part of the law, and I think that it certainly should be considered by the court.
Okay. So you're sitting in the Cambridge District Court where you're getting appointed. You're taking the place of a very, very good judge, Michelle Hogan, who I practiced in front of for many, many, many years. A case is brought to you, before you. It's a jury trial, as most of them are, jury of 6 in the district court. And the plaintiff puts on their case, and they're successful. It's a car accident, a rear-end collision. Insurance company denies the claim, claiming that the meds are unreasonable or not related to the accident. But they happen to hire a pretty good lawyer, and that lawyer got a pretty good judgment on the underlying case. What are you going to do with the 93A claim when you're looking at it and saying, geez, they should have paid on this?
I would allow it to go forward.
Okay, well, going forward is going forward with you, not a jury.
Correct.
It's going before you.
Yes.
And are you going to be willing to double or triple damages and award attorney's fees?
If I feel it's warranted, yes.
Okay. Most judges don't seem to feel it's warranted these days. And I think that's why insurance companies get away with so much in terms of not settling cases. Would you agree with that?
That'd be fair to say.
Do you think insurance companies discriminate in these cases against people of color?
In my experience, I think that people of color don't get treated as the same as other folks, yes.
By insurance companies?
Correct.
Okay. And people, not just of color, but people from poorer communities. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that as well.
And how are you going to address that when you're sitting in the Cambridge District Court?
Well, the insurance companies obviously being the ones that are being sued are the ones who elect what type of trial they have. So they're going to generally elect a jury trial, but if there is a decision that gets to me after a jury verdict, certainly I will make what I feel to be a just decision under the circumstances.
Well, I represent a lot of poorer communities. My office is in Everett, which is not a wealthy community. It's where I grew up. I represent East Boston. I represent Lynn. I represent Chelsea. And my experiences with the plaintiffs who come from those communities, that insurance companies don't treat them as fairly as they do people who come from other communities. And I would hope that when you're sitting in the Cambridge District Court, that you think about that and address that appropriately when those cases come before you. Now, do you think that the folks who appear before the courts, we've heard a lot about implicit bias. We've heard a lot about how each one of us in some way, shape or form has some type of implicit bias that we have to look into ourselves and try to address. Have you seen that type of bias in your practice?
I can think of times where I thought that that was what was going on.
You think it happens in the courts?
I think it does, yes.
You think it happens with police officers who will pull somebody over?
Yes.
Okay, you familiar with the Long decision that just came down from the Supreme Court?
Yes.
And that decision basically made it easy to prove implicit bias by police officers. It didn't change the law. The law is the same. You cannot stop somebody because of their color or race, ethnicity. That's been the law of the Commonwealth in the country, in theory since its beginning, but practically speaking for maybe a couple of decades in terms of the case law. But it hasn't changed it, but it's made it easier to prove. How are you going to look at those types of cases in terms of motions to suppress? Are you going to be able to really take a look at them and without out and out saying, well, he stopped this guy because he's Latino, or he stopped this guy because he's black? You think you're going to be able to look at it and say, you know, maybe not intentionally, but maybe there's an implicit bias there that caused it?
I think it's certainly one of the factors that a good judge should be able to take into consideration when making a decision on what might have occurred on any type of traffic stop. Absolutely, especially when you're dealing with you know, an officer that is a different race than the person who's sitting in the defendant's table.
Okay, we have an African-American man who's driving down the street and it's stopped for a traffic violation. And that stop is made by 3 officers that are in an unmarked unit that are part of the drug unit. Those are the facts. Traffic violation, red light, speeding, I don't care what it is. I don't think that's relevant. Not using a blinker, whatever. How are you going to look at that case? You've seen it 1,000 times. I've seen it in my practice 1,000 times. And we all know what's really going on there.
Sure.
You know, members of detectives from the drug unit are not stopping people for not using their blinker, right? They're looking for something else, right?
Exactly.
Are you going to be able to look at that and say, this stop's no good?
I I'm certainly going to look at it in that type of lens, and have a discerning eye with regards to what the underlying reason is for the particular stop. Absolutely.
Well, I just gave you the reason. It's
Yeah.
a failure to use a turn signal. Drug unit stopping an African-American male. That's it.
Yeah.
What are you gonna do with that?
I'm going to follow the law.
What
And,
is the law?
well, with regards to that, if they had a bona fide reason to stop them,
I gave bona fide reason is for not using the blinker.
sure. Then I would, I don't necessarily agree with the reason why they are allowed to do that, or even the rationale behind it. But if it's a good stop, then it's a good stop. And
But that's not what Long says.
but I understand that, but then I would hope that whoever the defense counsel would present to me evidence that would support what Long says in order for me to be able to do what I can do.
But I just gave you that. It's the drug unit making the stop that normally does not stop people for failure to use a turn signal. It's an African-American male driving the car, and he didn't use his blinker. Anything to talk about there?
No,
You allow the motion?
I don't think so.
You would not allow the motion
No,
in those circumstances.
no.
Doesn't that go against the whole Long decision?
Allowing the motion?
Yeah, the motion to suppress.
I'm sorry, I misspoke. I would allow the motion. I'm sorry.
Okay. You surprised me with that.
No.
Okay.
I misspoke. I apologize.
Fair enough. All right. I noted in your questionnaire that you gave seminars for MCLE on district court evidence.
I did.
Now, I've been doing this for about twice, evidentiary rules is what we're talking about. I've been doing this for about twice as long as you. Do we have rules of evidence in the district court? I haven't seen them yet.
No.
They seem to be on the fly, don't they? It's whatever the judge thinks at the time.
Yes, pretty much.
Are you going to follow the rules of evidence when you're sitting there as a judge?
Yes.
Councilor Devaney brought up drug courts, and you've had some involvement with the drug court.
Correct.
You indicate. I have a little problem with drug courts. There's something about them I don't like. You have, and I've dealt with them as well. I've had clients in the drug court. Usually as a last resort is when they end up there. Fair to say?
Correct.
All right. They've already had regular probation. They've been through all of that. And now they're in drug court because nothing else is working.
That's correct.
Okay. What happens when somebody's assigned a drug court and they test positive for drugs?
In our drug court, they may get a sanction.
Which might mean they get locked up, right?
No, they don't get locked up. What a sanction in our drug court means, they may have to do, what we have is we have a court clinician that is assigned to us. He runs a group therapy program for our participants. They may be required to sit in on that particular therapy for a week if they're not already involved, or they may have to provide an essay as to what happened around the failed drug screen, and kind of talk about how their recovery is going.
Well, that's not the case with most of the drug courts, is it? They, usually when people, my experience has been when people test positive, they say, okay, take them into custody. Let's leave them there for a few days till we figure out what we're going to do. And that's the sanction, right?
I've heard of that, correct.
Okay. Should people get locked up for failing a drug test?
Not in my opinion, no.
Would you lock somebody up if you were overseeing the drug court in Malden? I think covers Malden and Cambridge right now, is run by Judge Lamoth. If you were filling in for Judge Lamoth and somebody who came in as in the drug court and failed the drug test, would you lock them up?
Generally speaking, no.
What do you mean generally speaking? When would you do it?
Well, as I told you before, I've been very intimately involved with the drug court, and I've seen some folks come in after being on a run for, 6 months, 8 months. And when they came and presented to the court, they look like, one breath from death. And so if they don't have a stable home, if they don't have a place to go, if they don't have food in their stomach or the ability to get it. And I feel as if that potentially it may be in order to save their lives. A short stint, not a long stint, in the sense to find some place for them to actually go on a long-term basis. That is the circumstances where I would consider jailing someone for a failed drug test.
I agree with you. Sometimes you have to lock them up to save their lives. But I think that's really unfortunate that that's what we do in this country and in this state, rather than having some facility that we can send them to that's not a jail.
I agree.
You know, but I get it, that sometimes you don't have a choice. Okay, I'm good. We spent a long time talking. You know, your practice is very similar to mine. So for me to suggest that you're not qualified wouldn't be wise. And I think you're a home run. I'm voting for you next week.
Thank you very much.
Counselor from Worcester is doing a heck of a job.
Thank you, Counselor. Good morning,
Morning,
Attorney
Counselor
Bailey.
DePaulo.
Congratulations again on your nomination.
Thank you very much.
So much has been said and topics that concern me have been brought up, and so I just wanted to put a point on a couple more issues really briefly. The first is I listened to your moving sharing of the compassion you had in the case with the young woman and the care and protection case and how that unraveled. And like you, I've interacted with the juvenile court. And so I'm sure like you, I know that the kids who wind up there, whether it's a CRA or a delinquency, are grossly disproportionately coming from particular communities. To Councillor Duff's earlier point, LGBTI a community, certainly Black and Latino, especially boys, showing up there disproportionately, and kids who are in our foster system. And there's so many factors for that. Again, as you know, as simple as, you know, the fact that a school resource officer is in a particular high school grossly, you know, increases the odds that a kid's going to wind up in the court system for something that a kid in another school would not, just by the basis of that. And we know that that happens more often than not in school districts that are predominantly Black and Latino. So, you know, I'm wondering how that factors into your philosophy around the district court, because kids who end up on that path are going to end up in district court as adults in high numbers. And so I'm wondering how that context would inform your jurisprudence.
Well, certainly it's always sad to kind of see people who graduate to the district court from juvenile court, and particularly when they're from lower income communities or people who are brown or Black, obviously. I think that as far as where I would sit, I've always favored a form of rehabilitation over incarceration. And so I would assume that and hope that whoever was the defense counsel representing them would present some type of, make a presentation with regards to how they get there, what the societal problems that they're facing, and hope that we could fashion some type of resolution to their case that keeps that in mind, hopefully with the thought of trying to improve their situation, not just punish them for what they may have done.
And I guess tangential to that, how do you feel about raising the age of juvenile jurisdiction?
I am aware of the science. I trust the science with regards to the brain development with children. My opinion on it is I believe in what the science says. I believe that you know, there is something to be said that kids don't develop in the way, and for the justice system not to adjust to what the science says, it would be, in my opinion, irresponsible.
And when you see younger defendants, younger in the context of the district court, is that a mitigating factor to you, the science around brain development?
It would be, yes.
And regarding your proclivity towards rehabilitation, and I appreciated in your application, you mentioned rehabilitation, deterrence, and punishment in that order as some of the factors you'd consider in exercising your discretion. How do you feel about the rehabilitation or mental health services as they exist currently in our House of Corrections and state facilities?
I think the House of Corrections and the sheriff's departments throughout the Commonwealth, or at least the ones that I've dealt with on a personal level, are well-intended and doing the best they can with the resources that they have. But I think that, like anything else that we could talk about involving the criminal justice system and resources, there always could be more that potentially could be done to service the community better. You know, as good as you may have it, there's always one person who could potentially fall through the cracks, and that's something that you know, can't be acceptable.
Echoing Councillor Kennedy's comments about diversity, I'll add to that diversity, the diversity of the pro bono experience and the experience in the community that you've undertaken. And I feel so good about you sitting on the bench because of that track record of serving the community and because of the substance you've brought to us and because of the praise and substantive praise that we heard this morning. I think the judge brilliantly articulated what we look for in a district judge, and the fact that he spoke that way about you goes a long way. So I look forward to voting in favor of your nomination, and I congratulate you again on being here.
Thank you very much, Councillor DiPaolo.
I just have a few questions for you. Have you ever been to a House of Correction?
I have.
State prison?
No.
Okay. So you've seen the conditions of the House of Correction you go to?
I have.
Why do you think we lock up so many people in the United States and Massachusetts and the rest of the country? Why do you think we do that? We do it more than any other country on earth.
I think that at one point in time in our history, we felt as if that it was the way to respond to criminal behavior. I also think that in some ways there's a financial incentive to do it as well.
There's a financial interest?
I said financial incentive to do it as well.
How's that?
Well, with regards to certain private jails, I don't think the Commonwealth of Massachusetts has them, but you asked me about the society as a whole.
Okay.
And so there may be other jurisdictions where you have private facilities, and obviously to justify your existence, you have to have folks in your facilities.
So how long you lived in Springfield?
Haven't lived in Springfield in the last 15 plus years.
Okay. Did you ever go to Forest Park Zoo?
I have.
When you went there, was it the old zoo?
I'm not sure what time period you're talking about where they call it the old zoo.
Well,
I'm sorry.
when I went there used to be cages for lions and a tiger in one and a leopard and other wild animals, and they'd be pacing back and forth in the cells. There was bars on them. You remember seeing that?
Yes, I do.
And they had a big cage in the middle of the facility that had monkeys in it and birds, and they were all caged up. You know they don't cage animals anymore in this country?
I'm aware.
Why do you think they stopped?
I would venture to guess that they believe to be inhumane.
The only people who put in cages now are humans. You're going to be sitting as a judge. Everybody that's in a jail cell is in there because a judge put them there. And I think, according to the study done at Harvard by Judge Gantz, asked it to be done on racism, it's a heck of a lot of racism. Heck of a lot of black and brown people in jails. Black women outnumber white women 10 to 1. but judges put them there. It always struck me, sitting in courtrooms for 42 years, that putting somebody in jail should be the absolute last resort when there's nothing else possible. But I don't see that. I still see the default position of judges is jail. It's easy. You don't have to think. Piece of wood could be sitting on the bench and do the jail. There's no thought process to that at all. Just jail. Send them off. Get rid of them. So I don't think you're going to be one of those type from what I hear about you. And, you know, it costs a small fortune to keep people in those facilities. And a lot of them suffer from mental health, which we've never got our hands around. For some reason, we think it's going to go away by putting people in jail cells. Do you think the prosecutors use the dangerousness hearings too much today?
I can tell you that in my, as I've been litigating for the past 19 years, I've seen an uptick in the amount of filings with regards to dangerousness hearings, certainly in the last 5+ years. As to whether or not it's too much, I'm not sure if I can necessarily say that, but I certainly have seen circumstances where I felt it was, particularly when I was representing someone, where I felt as it was unwarranted and certainly could have been worked out if we had a conversation rather than just a filing.
Well, the judge makes the call on that. And in my view, it's overused way, way too much. So in my view also, it's a terribly unfair law to the citizens of this Commonwealth, where by filing a piece of paper, a prosecutor can hold somebody in a jail cell without a hearing, waiting to have their dangerousness hearing. Take away their liberty and put them in a cell just by filing a piece of paper. And what I find is that cases that are being considered for the Superior Court, if somebody's held in a dangerousness in a district court, maybe it's just a coincidence. But it seems like a lot of the indictments come just towards the end of that 4 months. And then, of course, in the Superior Court, there's another dangerousness hearing. Now it's 6 months. And in this pandemic time, since March, everybody that's held on a dangerousness hearing that hasn't been released for COVID concerns is sitting still waiting, because pandemic has stayed time in the attributable dangerousness. It's stated. In a Superior Court, if you file a motion on your client, for your client, that stops the time. And you look at the law, and it was designed for a cooling off period, to get somebody away from somebody else for a while so things would calm down. And now it's being used to take away people's time in there. Or, to me, incredible that the pandemic has stopped people from getting out. It just tolls it. And with technology today, most people can be put on conditions. Most people, not all people, some people can be put on a bracelet in order to stay at their home 24/7, except that they have to go to a doctor or for some other emergency with the approval of probation. Are you going to use those devices we have today to keep people out of cages that cost us a fortune. You know, we spend more money on people in cages than we spend on kids in education. That's an absolute disgrace. But we have technology today that you can use if you really think somebody needs it. Put them in the house with a bracelet. You can't leave. The thing goes off, you get arrested immediately. So I would hope you'd consider using those kind of things. And you've had a lot of clients over your career. Most of them, when they get into the court system, they don't do anything wrong because they know the results. They know they're going to be incarcerated. So the vast majority of, bet you, your clients show up for court. They don't commit any more crimes when they're out. So I just think it's a shame that we still incarcerate the amount of people we incarcerate. Especially for nonviolent crimes where they haven't hurt anybody. We talked about the drug court. So let me give you this scenario. You're sitting in the drug court. They bring in 10 people on probation. Probation officer says, Johnny Smith has done well. Sally Jones, she tested positive 2 weeks ago. You said you would not put her in jail if the probation officer said, I'm recommending that she be incarcerated. You wouldn't do that?
Generally speaking, no.
Okay, aside from the example you used, aside from that, okay, so I went to a drug court, I spoke at one time, and that scenario happened. You get put in the dock, another person tested positive 2 weeks ago, put in the dock. I said to the judge, why did you put those two people in the dock? Well, we give them a little taste, so to speak. I said, but if they're working, they're going to lose their job. If they're providing money for their family, they're going to suffer. And from what I heard is they tested 2 weeks ago, but yet they came here today. They didn't default. They came here. Do you think putting somebody in jail is going to cause them to overcome a heroin addiction?
No.
I agree with you. I don't care if you put them in there for 3 years. When they get out, they still got a heroin addiction. Have you heard the state of Oregon did?
Yes, if you're referring to the legalization, yes.
They decriminalized all small amounts of every drug. What do you think of that?
It's certainly progressive. I don't live there, so I don't know how their population is, but I think that it certainly will impact the criminal justice system in the sense that you're not going to have a lot of folks who have small amounts of whatever the drug might be, with a turnstile into the jails on a regular basis because they get tripped up because they have, a small amount of marijuana or a small amount.
Why do you think people sell drugs for money under the radar? Why do you think people sell drugs?
Because it's illegal to do it in the open.
Yeah, but why? Yeah, but I don't do it, but I know it's illegal. But there are a lot of people that sell because they know it's illegal, right?
Correct.
Why do you think they do that?
In my experience, it's been from a variety of different reasons. One would be in order to support a habit that they may have themselves. Another reason may be so that they can eat. Another reason may be in order to because they don't have any other type of resources available to them to be able to earn money in a legal fashion.
So each of those examples, there's a money issue involved, right?
That's correct.
They sell a drug and they get money, don't they?
Correct.
So we've been fighting the war on drugs now for 50 years. Have you ever heard of a war that went 50 years in the United States?
No.
50 years. And we're still fighting it. And the only people that are making out are the drug sellers that don't care what they sell on the street. They don't care what effect it has on the person paying for it. And the person paying for it under an addiction has to get money somewhere. Some people steal for it because the addiction is so bad. And I think anybody with a bad heroin addiction, anybody, including myself, if we had no money, we'd have to steal to get it. So the question is, why do we keep letting the drug sellers sell and make money? We can't stop them. We haven't stopped one bit of it in 50 years. Why do we keep doing it? Isn't there some other way?
I can think of a lot of different ways.
I can think of one, Oregon.
Sure.
I can think of one, Portugal.
Yeah.
The country didn't fall apart. The state's not going to fall apart in Oregon. They've just cut out the drug seller. They can't make money anymore. There's nobody to sell to. Crime rate tumbles. The killings involved, the drug sellers killing each other over product and all that other stuff. The amount of people that have been arrested, lawyers, police officers, judges, are taking bribes, taking money because of illegal drug sales. It's corrupted most of our nation. And we continue to do it. We don't learn our lesson, in my view. So I hope, and I'm pretty confident you will, when you're on the bench, not be a judge that defaults to jail because somebody's addicted to a substance. We don't put people in jail because they're addicted to cigarettes or a lot of other products. We keep putting them in jail for heroin and other drugs, and we've never stopped it, and we never will stop it. Did you vote for the legalized marijuana?
I believe I did, yes.
I think it was about time, don't you?
In my experience, yes.
Since we could buy it at any city or town in the state of Massachusetts, and any high school in Massachusetts, all underground, right over here at the common garden, public garden over here. We could buy it. Any of us could. All underground. Now you can go to a store and buy it without fear of getting arrested. The state hasn't fallen apart. In fact, it's made a hell of a lot of money on the taxing it. Well, maybe you'll be a standard bearer in the courts to change the thinking of this drug issue, keeping people out of jail. Your mother's a lawyer.
She is.
And does she practice?
She's not practicing right now.
Okay. Is she proud of you being nominated for this position?
She tells me she is, yes.
Yeah. I'm sure she is. I would be too if you were my son. Or,
thank you.
Yeah. Joe Franco, I got a text from him. He's still at a doctor's office, so he's not going to come in. But had he been here, he would have spoken about having supervised you when you were on the CPCS list out in Springfield. You still on that?
I am, yes.
Yeah. So he had nothing but but good comments to make about you. You handle your cases well. You were always up to date on everything you had to do. And you had a good reputation for fighting for your clients in court.
I really appreciate that.
Yeah. And Judge Bobby Santinello sent a letter for you, and it's going to be in your file. Just thinks the world of you.
He's a
You
great
and he
guy.
used to work together a little bit?
We shared office space together for 10 years.
Yeah, he's a great guy.
He is.
Well, you come highly recommended, and you're going to have a vote next week if we meet, and we probably will. And I have no reason to doubt what has been said today, that you will be confirmed without any issue.
Thank you very much.
And
Counselor?
just remember, take care of the citizens of the Commonwealth. Be compassionate. They're paying for all of this stuff you and I are getting. Okay?
I'll keep that in mind. Thank you.
Counselor, I was remiss. I have one question.
You were remiss?
In asking this very important question.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
You represented a victim of a pedophile priest.
I did.
I'm very concerned about that, pedophile priest. I knew Father Shanley. We all know Father Shanley. And I'm a Catholic. And when I miss Mass in Watertown, I go up the street in Newton, the French church, we called it, St. Jean's. And he was one of the priests there. And I don't know why, I felt guilty when I went to church and he was hearing Mass. I didn't like him. I felt guilty. I don't like a priest, but there was something about him that he had phony stamped on his forehead. And he was like a Svengali. He had these parishioners putting on him on a high pedestal. Well, we learned that he had raped hundreds and hundreds of children, most of them starting at 6 years old from the school. He didn't even take them from recess. And I know personally the Ford family, and they went publicly that their child had been raped from the time he was 6 to 12 years old. And no one would believe them because they were the first. And all the parishioners turned on them. He cried. He was a phony. He went before the parishioners and everything. He didn't get a life sentence, which he should have. I really believe no one should have. And to put salt in the wound, he was sent to New York to oversee male boy prostitutes whose mothers were prostitutes, and they don't even know who the fathers were. It was like putting a kid in a penny candy store. Not only did he violate them, he pimped. So I'm very glad that you got that case and you gave it your all, because I don't call someone like that a priest. They're the most vile people in the world, and there's no punishment enough for a pedophile priest. So having said that, tell us about that case that you had.
Sure. It was a number of years back. I represented a gentleman. He was in our office, and he was there because, I believe he was there because of a divorce that he was going through. And we were sitting around talking, and we were having a conversation about something in regards to his divorce. And he almost matter-of-factly, in the middle of a conversation, blurts out the fact that he had been abused by a priest. And we did not really kind of appreciate what he had said, because it was so matter-of-fact as to the way that he kind of brought it up in the middle of a conversation. But what ended up happening was that he repeated himself, and we started to think about how we were going to address this issue. He requested that I represent him because we had a very good relationship. My partner felt as if that it would be a conflict for him to continue going forward with it. And so we sat down, had a more detailed conversation with him, kind of unpacked all of what his memory was. And basically what he told us was that when he was a young boy, probably about the age of 6, 8 years old, his mother was very involved in the Catholic Church. She was honored by the fact that the priest at this particular Catholic church wanted her son to be an altar boy. And so he served as an altar boy for a couple years. And in so doing, eventually his relationship with the priest grew. He started to isolate him. What he talked about was the fact that they basically had a game that they were playing, you know, and that was kind of how it was phrased to him. Eventually, after playing the game, it started to go into a lot of touching. The priest touching my client, also the priest requesting that my client reciprocate the touching, touching genitals, touching other areas, and it got very graphic. And it continued, he continued to pervasively sexually assault my client over a period of years. My client did not tell anybody what was going on. What was kind of phrased to him was that he needed to keep it quiet because God would not appreciate you breaking a secret that you have with a priest. And he did keep it secret. He kept it secret for a long time. The only reason that the abuse actually stopped was because...
I just got to interrupt and give you, can you wrap it up like in a minute or two? We got the Lieutenant Governor coming in.
Absolutely, absolutely. The only reason it stopped was because he was transferred to another parish. And so we ended up filing a complaint in the Superior Court. A lot of those cases were grouped together, and we ended up going to a high-low arbitration. He had to opt in as a plaintiff as the arbitration. He did so, and then we were able to kind of tell his story. It was very therapeutic to him to be able to do so. We were able
Thank you.
I'm sorry, we were able to get I don't remember exactly what the settlement was, but we were able to get him aptly compensated.
Great, thank you very much. Meeting's over.
Thank you, Councilor
Lieutenant
Juvenville.
Governor.
Thank you.
For letting me do that. Thank you.
Ready?
Good afternoon, everyone. I know you have a really busy agenda today. I just wanted to start our assembly and call it to order and ask Councilor Duff to lead us in prayer and pledge.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. Just a moment of silence to honor all the teachers who are working so hard through this pandemic and hoping that they will all be vaccinated soon so schools can open, parents can get back to work, and the economy can get going. So may they all have the strength that it requires right now to do this challenging work, and just let them know our thoughts are with them. I pledge allegiance
To the
flag
of the United States
of America,
and to the republic for which
It stands,
one nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
liberty and justice.
justice
for all.
Okay. I recognize Councilor DiPaolo for a motion to record advice and consent for the financial warrant.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I recognize Councilor Hurley for a motion to record advice and consent for the pending list of notaries public and justices of the peace.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I recognize Councilor Duff for a motion to record advice and consent for the appointment of Kristen Buxton to the position of Associate Justice of the Superior Court.
My pleasure and honor to submit that nomination, Governor.
Second.
Is this on Attorney Buxton?
Yes.
Yes, it is.
Okay,
There's a motion and a second. Councilor Devaney?
I second it, and I have, can I speak? Lieutenant
Yes.
Governor? Thank you. First of all, I ask your indulgence because this is a very unique, and I'm 100% for this, and I thank you and the governor. She knocked it out of the park. We have got one of the best that I've seen in my 21 years. But I'm going to ask your indulgence because I have a statement that's going to be put in the record in our files, and it's very important to me because it's unique. I have been thoroughly involved in 3 of Attorney Buxton's cases. They have been covered in the media, in newspapers, and on TV. So I hope you'll allow me to put this in my statement because I think it's very important that I have this in our file. First of all, Kristen.
I can't hear you, Marilyn.
I don't know, something happened to my mic. It's turned off.
Okay, I can hear you now. I can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. First of all, Kristen Buxton, this is her 3rd time applying. I don't understand no rhyme or reason, but I do want to put in the record, no political contributions, and most outstanding. And she has had major felonies, child sexual assaults, 24 years practicing, domestic violence, burglary, home invasion, homicide. She's in court nearly every day. I believe with the increase of violent crimes in this society, we need a judge with her excellent criminal background of cases. I want to note that Attorney Buxton has represented clients that are very well known, very publicized, as I said. We received many letters, but we received a letter from Bowie, and he said that he couldn't say more about Attorney Buxton and how highly he respects her. And he reported about being in a case, she was in court for 6 months. Okay, so interesting, I saw this case on Court TV. And it was an Asian man who worked in he was a small store owner, and he was working late. So he went in the back, and he was going to sleep overnight. When 2 men came to rob him, they beat him brutally. They were forcing him to open the safe, and he was so wounded, he couldn't stand to open the safe, so they shot him. It was a long trial requiring different people who could speak 2 languages to interpret for the 2 criminals. Now, the case that we are all, I'm sure everyone has heard, it was the case of a woman who broke into a home in the middle of the night, kidnapped a 2-year-old baby from her bed, assaulted her, burnt her with cigarettes all over her body, from head to the bottom of her feet, chopped off her hair, leaving deep wounds. Then she dropped her in this cold winter night, naked, by the side of the road. And you know what? She was still awake. And there was woods on the other side. If this baby had gone into the woods, this would have been a homicide. An elderly couple driving by, they thought it was a doll, but decided to turn around. They wrapped her in clothes. She was transported to a hospital. Now, I talked with the father for over 20 minutes, and he asked the council to vote no on Susan O'Neill, who was representing the client, and Miss Hannah. And they didn't come because they didn't want to bring any more attention with reporters. His daughter was 7 years old now. And he told me that she still had trouble putting on her socks in the morning because of all the scars all over her legs and her feet. So Miss Hamill went to court, and attorney Buxton asked for up to 15 years. Susan O'Neill asked for 3 years. And the judge sentenced her to 5 to 7. She will be out next week. She will be on a bracelet for a year. Now, she also, Abigail Hannah, went to the parole board for 2 years. And I checked with them. They rejected her for 2 years. And they told her, yes, she has schizophrenic. A lot of people coming before them have schizophrenic, but no one is sexually assaulted, brutally tortured, and left a little naked child at the side of a highway. So now she has got medical help and so forth, and that's great. Because of a new rule that I found, that for good behavior, an inmate has 2 weeks off a month of their sentence. So she'll be released next week. With the stipulation, she will not be allowed to enter the towns and cities of the children she has attacked. And as I said, the parole board told her, this is not the first time that you've done this. So, so given that. So now the third case we all read about, she was prosecuting a well-known drug dealer that I just mentioned to a nominee today, okay, at the Salem court. The judge in the Salem court said, because he was not a citizen, he wouldn't put him in jail, he sent him to 2 years probation. Okay, so the good news, as I said, following up on this, he was in federal court and he was deported. So I want this on the record on our files, because this is the most unique situation I have ever been in, to have a nominee before me that I know thoroughly about 3 of the cases. And in fact, one of the cases, my colleagues voted, I was the only one that voted no, on Susan O'Neill, who was who defended Miss Hannah. So I think it is my responsibility, and I'm incumbent to have this filed in our office. And I always say I look for compassion and empathy. And Attorney Buxton has it. She follows up with victims, including the family of this baby victim who perpetrated the cruelest crime on this 2-year-old child that is now 7, that will never have a normal life for what she endured. I understand it. I want to make it clear. I believe and I understand every person, no matter how vile, deserves to be represented. But I'll tell you why I voted no against Susan O'Neill. She had no compassion. She had no empathy. And when I told the account that I got from the father, and I wrote down, and I just read to you, she was asked by my colleague, is that correct what Councilor Devaney said? And she said, it wasn't really the full account that she got about the wounds. And my account was right from the father. You know what I wanted? I wanted compassion and empathy. I wanted Susan O'Neill to say, I represented the best of my ability for my client. But you know what? I had sleepless nights thinking of that baby. She never mentioned the baby. And so she's sitting on the bench, and she'll be sitting on the bench with Judge Buxton. And so, I couldn't be more pleased. First of all, I want to thank Attorney Buxton for reapplying, not once, not twice, 3 times. And we lose people. They apply and they see someone less qualified and they won't apply again. So I thank her publicly. And I thank you and the governor to finally recognize this person. And you know what? In the letters that we got, they said she was a mentor to everyone in the office. She would stay after hours to help a fellow attorney and to educate and to help. And you know what? And this is not in my documentation. I'm saying this personally. I believe she will be a mentor, especially to someone who was voted by my colleagues who had only 6 cases in 21 years in the Superior Court and who egregiously was voted a judge at his hearing, not at a protocol for over 60 years that we vote at the public assembly, as we are doing now for Attorney Buxton, and next week for our nominee, Mr. Bailey. So I know that she will mentor. She will be such an addition on the Superior Court. She should have been there years ago, but it's not too late. We have lost so many good people because of the age 70, and I pray to God that I can change that, I can get someone to do it, because I don't have the authority. We've lost so many good people. So with that, I'm going to end, and I thank you, and I thank my counselors for being patient to let me get through this. But I think, in all due respect, I think that this nominee has gone beyond what we have seen in other nominees, and I'm very proud, and I usually don't say it, I'd be proud to vote today, and I know that she'll be such a credit to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. I want to thank my counselors for their patience.
Thank you, Councilor Devaney. Thank you for your comments. They will be part of the record. And we do have a motion and a second, and unless there's anyone else that would like to be heard, we can move forward with the roll call.
Councilor Ferreira?
Can you say that a little louder? It was hard to
Councilor
hear you.
Ferreira, please.
Yes.
Councilor Jubenville?
Yes.
Councilor Devaney?
Yes.
Councilor Iannella? Councilor Iannella?
Yes.
Councilor Duff?
Yes.
Councilor Kennedy?
Yes.
Councilor DiPaolo?
Yes.
Councilor Hurley?
Yes.
8-0, Governor.
Okay, thank you. We have a new nomination today. His name is John Garland, has been nominated to the position of Associate Justice of the Boston Municipal Court. This falls within your jurisdiction, Councilor Iannella.
Yes, thank you. February 17th at 10 a.m., if that works with everyone.
Okay, then it's February 17th at 10 a.m. for your hearing with John, also known as Jack Garland. I thank you. I know you have a lot on your plate today. Be safe and be healthy.
Thank you.
Concludes our business. Thank you.
17th.